Today, we're going to break down a really powerful framework for learning one of the world's most popular programming languages. It's called the Daily Python Mastery Blueprint.
So this is a huge question, right? You've probably watched a ton of tutorials, read all the articles, but actually turning all that knowledge into a real practical skill, it can feel, a little overwhelming. It's so easy to get stuck in what people call tutorial hell. So where do you even start? Well, the answer, according to this framework we're digging into, is to start with a blueprint. Just think of it like a map. It's a clear guide that takes all the guesswork out of the learning process. At its core, this blueprint is a really simple two-phase daily plan. And the whole point is to take you from being a beginner who's just kind of consuming information to being a builder who's actively creating stuff. It's all about taking small, actionable steps every single day. Okay, so the plan kicks off with phase 1, core knowledge. This is all about laying a super solid foundation. I mean, you can't build a skyscraper on sand, right? And you definitely can't build complex apps without mastering the absolute basics first. This phase is broken down into 2 essential activities. First, you set aside time to actually understand the theory, and then you immediately lock it in with some hands-on syntax drills. Let's start with that theoretical foundation. So, the very first step in your daily routine is dedicating some quality time to that theoretical foundation. This isn't just about memorizing how to write code. It's about understanding the core concepts, the why behind it all. And what are these core concepts? We're talking about the absolute must-haves, things like variables for storing data, lists and dictionaries for organizing it, and functions to make your code neat and reusable. This is the bedrock, the fundamental logic that makes pretty much every program work. But let's be real, theory on its own isn't enough. You've got to make it stick. And that brings us right to the second step of phase 1. You have to reinforce that knowledge with daily syntax drills.
Now, the goal here is not just raw memorization. The whole point of these drills is to get your hands dirty, to do exercises that make those new concepts actually stick in your brain. This is how theory starts to become muscle memory. Okay, so let's say you've wrapped up phase 1 for the day. You've learned the theory, you've drilled the syntax, you have the tools. But this brings up the most important question of all. How do you take these ideas and actually apply them to build something real? And that question, well, it leads us straight into the second half of the plan. Phase 2, application and review. This is where you make that big leap from learning to doing, from theory to practice. It's all about building with the skills you just sharpened. And just like the first phase, this one has 2 core parts. You jump into a practical build session where you actually create something, and then you follow it up with the absolutely crucial process of debugging and documenting your work. So this is step 3 of the overall blueprint, the practical build session. As you can probably guess, the theme is pretty clear. It is time to start building. So what do you build? The blueprint suggests you start small. Think of a simple script that could automate a boring task for you, like renaming a bunch of files. Or maybe pick a personal project that you're actually excited about. The key thing is to directly use the concepts you just learned back in phase 1. And this leads us to the final, and I would argue the most critical step in the entire daily cycle. Always debug and document. Because look, writing the code, that's only half the battle. The real learning kicks in when you review and reflect on what you just made. This step really does 2 super important things. Debugging is basically detective work. It's about hunting down and fixing errors in your code. But documenting? That's about writing down what you learned, what worked, what totally didn't, and why, to make sure that knowledge actually stays with you for the long haul. All right, let's zoom out and put all these pieces together. Because this isn't just some checklist you run through at one time and you're done. When you combine these 4 steps, you create this incredibly powerful, repeatable, daily learning cycle. And here it is, the whole mastery loop in one picture. You learn the theory, you drill the syntax, you build a small project, and then you debug and document it. And the next day, you just repeat the process, constantly building on and reinforcing your skills. This right here is probably the most important takeaway from this entire blueprint. There is no finish line. Real mastery doesn't come from finishing one course or one big project. It comes from committing to this daily loop, this cycle of continuous improvement. It's that consistency that really forges the skill. So, with this clear 4-step blueprint laid out right in front of you, there's really only one question left.
What's the first thing you're going to build?